Welcome back to That's DPI podcast. We are starting our draft coverage this week. So, starting now up until the NFL draft at the end of April, each episode is going to be about two different divisions leading up to the NFL draft. And the night before the NFL draft, Wednesday, April 23rd, is going to be Zach and I's live mock draft. Zach, what are we looking at this week?
Yeah, we're excited to bring you a full month of draft coverage, but today we're going to be looking at two divisions, very interesting positions. We're going to be looking at the NFC North and the NFC East. I wanted to make sure I got them right. That's the Cowboys division, NFC East. Eagles fans, we know that you like to interact with our stuff. We're excited to bring your guys' draft analysis first for this first episode, but we will be starting with the NFC North, and we will be starting with my Detroit Lions. But I'm going to pass it over to Tyler to begin his analysis of the draft choices for Detroit this year.
So, Detroit's team is very offensive based, but what they are lacking right now is defense, specifically depth at defense. NFL.com lists Detroit needs as offensive line along with defensive line and safety. For me, the real question in Detroit is where on defense are they going to go? My personal guess is that they're going to go with defensive line to help out with Aiden Hutchinson, along with to cover the loss of Zadarius Smith. Detroit is known for doing a lot of wild cards in their draft, but I don't know how Detroit can go somewhere other than defensive line. Zach, what's your take on this? What are the Lions doing this week or this month?
Everything that you said makes sense, and I respect that you went the sensible route. I will preface this by saying that I love my GM. Brad Holmes is amazing, and he has on an incredible run drafting. But I will say that Brad Holmes often does not do whatever draft analyst says makes sense. I think that the Lions are going offense in the first round. I think that there's an abundance of offensive talent that's going to fall right into their lap, specifically offensive guard. The Lions lost Kevin Zeitler, who played at an all-pro level last season, and they don't quite have an answer for that. I mean, Graham Glasgow is their left guard, or was their left guard last year, and he played very poorly. And Christian Mahogany was a rookie who was a great filling in, but we don't know if he's a full starter yet. We only saw limited looks at him. So I think the Lions, regardless of whether they bring back a veteran guard, should address offensive guard in this draft. And I think that Tyler Booker from Alabama and Gray Zabel from North Dakota State, both are great options. Booker, high on the grit index. The dude's a stud. He loves to get down and dirty in the trenches. And Gray Zabel was actually coached by the Lions' current tight ends hire in Tyler Roll. So there's a little bit of a connection there. And Gray has talked highly of Tyler, the coach, not you. But I think that
He did not talk highly of me.
Yeah, he doesn't know who you are. But the offensive guard is definitely a position. I would not be surprised if the Lions went BPA and took a sliding wide receiver like Luther Burden. But I think that the Lions do go with a sensible option. I do think that it's unlikely they will be going with an edge rusher, and that will be whomever falls to them of the two choices of Mike Green out of Marshall and Landon Dickerson out of Arkansas. So one of those two guys would be a perfect edge fit on the opposite of Aiden Hutchinson's scheme fits. So at 28, the Lions could go any one of those directions.
NFL.com, and I want to get your take on this. I want to get your take because this is your team, so I want to spend a little bit more time on this. NFL.com says one of your needs is also wide receiver. Is there any shot that a first-round wide receiver is going to Detroit this year?
Well, yeah, I just said that Luther Burden could very well go to Detroit if he falls. And here's the situation of
But
wide
is that
receiver.
only him, or is it just Burden?
It does depend on who's available, honestly. I mean, the only reason that the Lions selected Terrion Arnold last year is because he fell outside of the top 20. He was never on anybody's radar, but he became the BPA. Lions moved up with Dallas and selected Arnold. Okay, so when you look at the Lions receiver situation, you have St. Brown, Jamison Williams. Those are clear-cut number one guys, but J-Mo is still on his rookie contract. So extending him is kind of a question of character. Do you want to keep around a guy that's been suspended in 2 of his 3 seasons in the NFL? I don't know. Maybe the Lions do. But their third receiver is an injury-prone former Bronco, Tim Patrick, who played admirably for them last season, but he does not have many good productive years left in him. So getting his replacement to not only fill in for it if he gets injured again, but to potentially take over that wide receiver 3 role once that 1-year extension of Tim Patrick expires is on the table. And if McMillan from Arizona falls, the Lions will take him. And maybe they'll actually trade up a few spots to get him, because 6'5", 210, that's literally what Tim Patrick is built like. That's who they want in that spot. But I think that Luther Burden is really, really talented and really skilled. And he's been sliding a lot recently because of some route tree concerns. But I think it's very possible the Lions go wide receiver.
So essentially, we've mentioned almost every position but quarterback. The Lions could take literally anybody but a quarterback this year.
I don't think they'll take a tackle, and I don't think that they'll take a linebacker.
Okay. Well, someone else that you guys lost this year was your offensive coordinator. He went to the Chicago Bears, your guys' arch rival. Ben Johnson has the 10th pick in the draft. A lot of people, a lot of mock drafts are looking at Ashton Genty to go to Chicago. If he falls that way, I think it's a no-brainer. Ashton Genty is a Chicago Bear if he falls to 10. If he doesn't fall to 10, I think they could get an offensive line. What do you think?
For once, we are in complete agreement. I think that Genty is a stud, bona fide stud. And if a team doesn't trade up to get him ahead of Chicago would be foolish to not get him. They need run game support to help Caleb Williams. DeAndre Swift was putrid in the first 8 games of the season. He came into his own a little bit, but that's partly because their O-line is bad. They invested heavily in the O-line for Caleb, and I think putting a talented runner behind that O-line should be their number one priority in the draft. And I do think at 10, Genty should be there. Some mocks have him going to Vegas at 8. I don't know if Vegas is going to do that. I don't think they will do that. So I think that the Bears going Genty is a very high probability. However, if they do go O-line, I've identified Armand Membu from Missouri. He is a pass protecting, he's a better pass protecting than Kelvin Banks, another guy that I've seen in the draft who's kind of falling on everyone's board. So I think Membu is the best tackle in the draft, and I think that he will go to the Bears if Genty isn't there. And I like that for them a lot. That would mean they've changed, or they've addressed 4 of their 5 offensive line positions in Chicago. I mean, they've signed a center in Doug Kramer. They signed a guard in Jonah Jackson, and they traded for Joe Thuney from Kansas City. And so taking Membu would mean that they're completely overhauling the O-line. And since Caleb Williams took more sacks, 20 more sacks than any other quarterback in the NFL, it makes total sense. So I could see them going either way.
I agree. You mentioned some experts, Mel Kiper being one of those experts. He's got Ashton Genty going to Las Vegas. I do agree with you that if Genty's gone and they go for offensive line, they could get Membu. I also want to throw the name Will Campbell out there. Mel Kiper has him going at pick 13 to the Miami Dolphins, but he looks at to be the second best offensive guard, still well worthy of a first-round pick. So Bears fans, if Genty is not there, those are the 2 names that I would know about, is Membu from Missouri and Will Campbell, a guard/tackle from LSU.
Moving on to Green Bay. You said the Bears were our arch nemesis just a few minutes ago. I think that it's actually the Green Bay Packers, one of the most storied rivalries in football. But I'm going to start off their analysis by saying that the Green Bay Packers are in the black and blue division, and they've got a lot of wide receivers to contend with, whether that's Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings, whether that's Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams, 2,000-yard guys on the Lions, or whether that's DJ Moore on the Bears. One of these is not like the others, but regardless, DJ Moore is still a talented wide receiver, and you still need someone to cover him. So I think that Green Bay needs to address defense if they want to remain competitive in a division that has some of the best receiver talent in football. And I have them selecting Siobhan Revel Jr. from Eastern Carolina or East Carolina. If it were not for his injury concerns and an ACL he tore in practice this past college season, I think he would have actually gone before the Packers were selecting because he's so dang talented. But his medicals are a concern. However, it was a midseason injury last year. He'll be healthy for hopefully training camp at least. So I think that Revel Jr., that's a guy who's got to be on your radar if you're a cheesehead. 6'2", lengthy man cover corner. He reminds me a little bit of Trent McDuffie, except for taller. He excels in man coverage, but he doesn't necessarily have the ball skills. He only had 3 interceptions in total in college, and that was similar to McDuffie, who did not rack up the interceptions, but was a sticky man cover corner. I love him a lot to the Packers.
I absolutely think defense is their number one concern. But that being said, I think it would be very Green Bay Packers-esque to deprive Aaron Rodgers of a first-round wide receiver and then immediately start giving them to Jordan Love. When I did my research, I looked at a lot of mock drafts, and a lot of the mock drafts that I see have them picking wide receivers. A wide receiver that I really like for the Packers is Matthew Golden. He's a wide receiver out of Texas. I think he'd be a really good fit to replace Christian Watson, who is recovering from the ACL. I think Golden is going to be a good fit for the Green Bay Packers offense. I would not be shocked if they do not pick a first round receiver again. But if they do go offense, I'm looking at Matthew Golden.
Yeah, he's a sneaky, underrated guy. He ran a lightning fast 40-yard dash at the combine this year, and he played really, really well at Texas this year. So I would not be shocked if Green Bay made the move there. I would also not be shocked if he goes earlier than Green Bay's pick because I like Golden so much. But I agree
Golden's
with you.
a very deep threat as well. Golden was extremely good for Texas on the deep ball last year, and I think that could really help Green Bay's offense as well.
Yeah, I think that if he's there, they should take him. They would be smart too. I just don't think he'll get there, and I think by the time the Packers are selecting, there will still be some quality edge rushers on the board, and I think it would behoove them to help out their pass rush. So I think that they're either going corner or edge.
I think I'm starting
But
to realize why it's called the black and blue division, because if you've got a division with Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and adding Matthew Golden to that mix as well, they are just going to be beating each other up all day, every other Sunday.
oh yeah, it would be a nightmare for corners in that division. But moving on to the purple team in this division, Minnesota. What are your thoughts on them? They pick right after Green Bay at 24. If they don't trade out of that, what do you think?
You mentioned the trade. I don't look too deep into trades. However, a lot of a lot of experts have been talking about the Vikings possibly trading back, or even trading out. If that is the case, however, then anything can happen. Depends on who they trade with and where they trade to. If the Vikings don't trade, though, I think they're going to be looking for a corner. A lot of the corner that I like is also a Texas guy, Barron. I think he is going to be a good help on defense. I think Minnesota is going to have their offense figured out. I like JJ McCarthy. I think he was set up to be Rookie of the Year last year. Obviously, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison as well. I think what they need to improve on is corner. And again, I like the Texas guy. I like Barron. He's gonna be good. Simple as that.
And I don't disagree with you there. I do think that the Vikings have a needed defensive back. I just don't think they're going to go corner. I think that they're going to go safety. They lost Cameron Bynum, or Cam Bynum, in free agency. And so I think they have a huge need for a playmaking guy in the secondary that Brian Flores can drop back into coverage or send on a nasty 9-man blitz up the middle, whichever poor, unfortunate quarterback has the misfortune of playing the Vikings. And I think that guy just put on a show at the combine. Nick Emanwari, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I hope I am. But Nick Emanwari, ridiculous combine, super agile, super fast. I think he's an athletic freak that Brian Flores is going to do some terrible things with, to my Lions, if they make that selection. I think they will. A defensive back is a huge weapon and asset for the Vikings. They need that. They have a great front seven, great pass rush with Van Ginkel and all those dudes that they got up there. So defensive back makes a lot of sense, especially when their pass catching room is complete. They don't need anybody else. Addison, Jefferson, Hawkinson, they're good. They don't need anybody else. I say that selfishly. I don't want to cover anybody. But moving on from that, unless you have some thoughts on what I have to say.
No, I was about to move on myself. Go for it.
Gotcha. So we're going to talk about all of our fans' favorite teams. A little fun fact: Philadelphia is our most watched city, and it's not particularly close. So thank you for all the support, Eagles fans. I'm sure it's all love there in the city of brotherly love. But we're going to talk about your Eagles and what they're going to do, starting with our NFC East coverage. I was talking to our fans.
Oh, okay.
I'm not talking about you. I know that you don't like the Eagles.
I love Philly. They're passionate fan bases, but right now, there's still some. It still hurts.
Tyler, you have to hide the ball. We have to make sure we have to keep the Eagles fans happy. They're going to mass dislike the video. They're so passionate.
They've came for me in the comments one time, and they're not gonna stop. But we do like the Eagles fans, though. As an employee of Arrowhead, I've dealt with Eagles fans at Chiefs and Eagles games. I've never seen a more passionate fan base than Eagles fans. So I can't even hate on them. The Super Bowl hurts, but I can't hate on them. That being said, though, the Eagles are very much needing defense this year. NFL.com says that defensive line, corner, and edge are all in need. Everything but secondary. And trust me, I know they do not need secondaries anymore. That being said, however, I think there's a circumstance where they can go for a safety. If Starks from Georgia can fall, I can see the Eagles trading up to go get him. Starks is not going to fall to 32, but if he falls outside of the top 10, I would not be shocked if Howie Grossman goes and gets that guy. If Starks falls to maybe 12 or 15, I would expect a call from the Eagles to go get Starks. If that is not the case, if Starks does end up being a top 10 pick, I really like Notre Dame, Xavier Watts, I think is who his name is. Right. Pro Football Focus has him at the big board for 39. If he is there at 32, I can see them going to get him. He is another safety, but I think those are the only two guys that can possibly go to Philly if Philly selects a safety.
Interesting. And something, I think this was one of your best takes of the entire video. I love Malachi Starks. Everything about him as a prospect. I want him to go to Detroit solely because he's so freaking good. He's going to be a Pro Bowler. I know it. I feel it in my bones. And I also feel somehow that Malachi Starks will fall out of the top 15 because his 40 was a little slow, similar to how Brian Branch of Alabama 2 years ago was a little slow in the 40, and he fell outside of the first round and was selected by Detroit and is now a Pro Bowler. He's a freaking stud. I feel the same way about Malachi Starks. So I do think that since Philly possesses 4 fifth-round picks due to comp picks and due to trades, I think Howie Roseman is going to finesse a deal here. They have traded up in the first round in the last 2 drafts to get a defensive lineman. I think that if Starks is there at like 18, 19, watch out because Philadelphia is making the move. However, if it's not Starks, I think that you have to replace Milton Williams, the defensive interior guy. He was such a wrecker in the Super Bowl and throughout the season that if you don't replace him, Williams went to a huge deal to New England. If you don't replace him, you're in trouble. And I don't think they've adequately done that yet. So I think that Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss is a name to remember for Fly Eagles Fly country here. He's a likely selection, and I also do think that they'll have to trade up for him as well. But I think they will. They have the capital to do so. They're not going to end the draft with 4 fifth-round picks. It won't happen. Howie Roseman will use them. There's no other reason to stockpile them like that. So that's my thoughts on the Philadelphia.
Howie Grossman will use those. Will trade some of those picks for sure. I don't think he's going to make a trade to go get Walter Nolan, though. I think Mel Kiper has Walter Nolan actually going to Philadelphia at pick 32. I think if Philadelphia uses the trade, they're going to go get Starks. NFL.com says that they're going to go get Starks at 24. And again, Mel Kiper has them picking Walter Nolan at 32. I think if they want Starks, they got to go get him. But if they want Nolan or any other defensive tackle, I think they can stay comfortably right at 32. And I think they can get the best defensive tackle available at that time.
Gotcha. Okay, I like that analysis, and I do see Nolan going at 32, almost as a consensus, really. You look at the mock drafts, he's a very popular pick for Philly. So I agree if they do decide to wait, but I'm almost certain they will trade up, whether it's for Nolan or whether it's for Starks. But moving on to another bitter rival of the Philadelphia Eagles, the Dallas Cowboys. I'll go ahead and start on this one. I think the Cowboys need playmakers. I think they need someone dynamic on that offense besides CeeDee Lamb because Dak Prescott, as many Cowboys fans don't like him, I think that he's extremely accurate and extremely solid, and he needs someone else to throw to. Jake Ferguson caught 0 touchdowns last year, and Brandon Cooks is gone. Gallup is gone. Who is the wide receiver 2 in Dallas? They have not addressed it yet. And once again, who is the running back in Dallas? Do they have any playmakers? I think that picking at 12, they're in a unique spot because wide receiver isn't really a strong class this year. So I don't want them to – I don't think they should pick a wide receiver at 12. I think that they should go tight end or running back. And I think that if the Bears don't scoop up Genty, then – they should go Genty, but if they can't go Genty, Amari and Hampton from South Carolina is a stud. Or is it North Carolina? I'm sorry. I believe it's North Carolina. But Amari and Hampton.
North Carolina.
Yeah. Amari and Hampton is a stud. 3 down back, 5'11" in the 220s. He would be exactly the dynamic guy they need in the backfield to help balance that offense out. But if they don't go Hampton, I believe there's a chance they also go Tyler Warren from Penn State. 100 plus receptions last year, 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns. Kid's a menace, and they need someone for Dak Prescott to check it down to when CeeDee Lamb is quadruple covered because they don't have another wide receiver.
For me, you can bookmark this, with the number 12 pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Dallas Cowboys select Omari and Hampton, running back, North Carolina. You can bookmark it. This is my most confident pick. ESPN and NFL both select Hampton going to Dallas. And it's not, but there's a reason that both of them agree on this. Look at who their new head coach is, Brian Schottenheimer. Brian Schottenheimer has always been a run-heavy team. NFL.com calls him a ball control play caller that focuses on the run game. And I think he's going to be the best running back available for guys that is not named Ashton Genty. Ashton Genty is not going to fall to 12. I would honestly be shocked if he falls to 10 with Chicago still, but if he does, Chicago's getting him at 10. The only way the Dallas Cowboys do not select Omari and Hampton is if they trade up in front of Chicago to go get Genty.
And I
That's my
also
most
think that,
confident take this week.
and I appreciate the confidence. I think that it's fairly likely that they'd take Hampton. He's not my most confident pick today, but I do think that Hampton's fairly likely. I just don't think Dallas has the capital to trade up, so I don't think they're going to get Genty personally. But I do think that Hampton would be it's a slam dunk perfect fit. If Dallas doesn't make the move, Jerry Jones is completely washed, if he's not already. But moving on to the Washington Commanders. This one stings. I don't want to talk about the Commanders anymore.
I've been a big fan of what the Commanders have done this offseason. We talked about it in our first episode. I think they need to go get Jaden Daniels whatever he needs. They've done that a lot on offense, and now I think it's time for them to go to defense. Edge and corner tend to be the go-to for Washington. I think edge is the bigger need. My pick, and I'm not as confident in this pick as I am Dallas, but my pick is Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky. I think he's going to be in the mix. I think James Pierce from Tennessee in the mix. I think both guys are going to be names that I would focus on and research a little bit more if I'm a Commanders fan. I'm not sure if both those guys are going to fall. I think at least one of them will, but if both of them are taken, another name that I'm looking for with the Commanders is Mikael Williams from Georgia, or even Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. But I think edge is absolutely going to be the way that the Commanders go. Maybe they don't, but I think that's the way they need to go at least.
Interesting. I agree with you on everything you just said, especially with edge being the bigger need, because the Commanders had a horrific defensive line last year. If they do not address that, they will not remain competitive. They're like the anti-Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles stocked up on pass rushers. The Commanders have no pass rushers, and they lost some of their best pass rushers in free agency this year. So they need to make a move in the draft, and I think in the first round. However, this is another situation where the Packers are kind of in. The Packers need to select a corner to remain competitive with all those wide receivers. I think the Commanders are also in that spot where an aging Marshawn Lattimore is not going to be your outside corner. He just won't. So you need someone to start outside so you can move Mike Sainstro back into the slot where he belongs. And so then you can shore up the cornerbacks. And I think that the guy that you mentioned, Maxwell Hairston, he is the best fit. 6'1". He's an outside corner. He would do a great job in that Commanders defense, and he's a total stud. And I think that if he's there, they'll take him. However, edge is a big need, like you said, like we agree. But at 29, it's going to be difficult to find a true difference maker at edge. A lot of them will have gone. The Lions need an edge, and they pick right before them. So unless they trade up and get somebody, there's not going to be a whole lot available. But one guy that I do think could be available, they could select, would be Donovan Ezekaraku. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right, but Donovan E. He is a edge that I think will be available and is talented enough. It's a very deep edge rushing class, so I do think the Commanders could get some value out of him at 29.
To the Commanders fans, I want to give one name of warning. And to the Eagles fans, I want to give one name of mockery. And that is NFL's take of Landon Jackson. I don't know how trustworthy the Commanders GM is to make good decisions, but NFL.com has Washington selecting Landon Jackson and edge from Arkansas. And if I am a Commanders fan, I'm going to be mad if that's the pick because he is a late second round pick according to Pro Football Focus. So Commanders fans, if you see the name Landon Jackson on Thursday of draft night, I am worried. Eagles fans, if you see that name, you can start laughing at the Commanders again.
I
But
disagree.
going
I think
on,
Landon Jackson's very talented, and I think the Lions could go
I
him
think he's
at
talented, but he's
28.
not a first-round pick.
Okay. I can see that.
But going on to our final pick, to our final team of the night. And this one, I already know, Zach, you and I are going to be debating this a lot. The New York Football Giants. They have the 3rd pick in the NFL draft. Who do you think they're taking?
To me, I don't think that you can justify taking a quarterback. I know that everyone thinks that they're going either Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders. First of all, Cam Ward is not going to be available. He won't. He simply is not going to be there at 3. It's not happening. So any Giants fans going to bed at night and dreaming of Cam Ward throwing to Malik Neighbors, stop it. He's not going to be there. He will be the number 1 overall selection to Tennessee. Not to Tennessee, I'm sorry. But you
Tennessee.
can book it. Oh, it is Tennessee. Yeah, you can book it. To Tennessee, he's going number 1. No doubt in my mind. So that leaves Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter. Those are the other 2 consensus top 5 guys. I think that the Giants will select Abdul Carter. And this is my most confident pick of the night. I know Tyler had his a few picks ago. Abdul Carter. Go ahead and buy the custom jerseys now, New York Giants fans, because Abdul Carter will be rushing the passer opposite of Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Sexy Dexy Lawrence. It will be ferocious. It will be a nightmare for opposing quarterbacks, and it will be a blast. And I think that Abdul Carter is too talented to pass up at 3. I would not rule out the Giants trading back into the first round to get Jackson Dart from Ole Miss, because quarterback is a need. But when you sign Russell Wilson and when you sign Jameis Winston, how are you then going to make the pick of Shadur Sanders, a guy who's undersized, has a weaker arm than most top 5 quarterbacks have, has good anticipation and good accuracy, but look at the games that he played in college. He never won a single big game against a ranked opponent. Maybe one. I don't know. The stats are scary. And the Giants, I think, can afford to wait one more year on a quarterback instead of reaching heavily on a 3rd round talent in Shadur Sanders. In my opinion, Shadur Sanders is a bust. Honestly, Cam Ward is a bust. Cam Ward in a normal quarterback class would go outside of the top 10, but he is just the best quarterback available, and so many teams need one. I hate this quarterback class. I've never hated a quarterback class more, and I think that the Giants will not go quarterback. They will not make the same mistake like they did selecting Daniel Jones at 6. They won't do it. They can't do it. It would be unfathomable.
So I'll pick up where you left off with the name Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones was a bad selection even at the time. On draft night, Giants fans like, why in the world are you drafting Daniel Jones? That's ridiculous. That's a stupid mistake. And they were right. I don't think Shadur Sanders is going to be the next Mahomes by any means. I do think Shadur Sanders is going to be very similar to how Zach Wilson or Sam Darnold turned out prior to this year's Sam Darnold. That being said, I also think Shadur Sanders is a Giant. I like Abdul Carter. I love Abdul Carter. But I don't think he's going to be there at 3. I think he's going to go to Cleveland. And so if you're the Giants and Carter's off the board, and so is Cam Ward, I think you either need to just get out of the first round, just trade out of the entire first round, or go get Sanders. I think Travis Hunter would be a good pick as well, but they still need a quarterback. Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston could be a good Band-Aid for their quarterback situation if they want to go get Travis Hunter. But I don't think they're going to bring in an aging Russell Wilson and a kind of salvageable Jameis Winston for their long-term future. What I do see them doing is drafting Shadur Sanders, Sanders playing 0 games in his first year, in learning under Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston are two veterans with good experience. Jameis Winston, a former number one overall pick. Russell Wilson, two-time NFC champion, one-time Super Bowl champion, basically two-time Super Bowl champion if they decide to run the ball there, but that's a separate podcast. These are good veterans that the Giants brought in. They did not bring them in for them to be the future. I think they're going to draft Sanders. He's going to sit under Russell Wilson for a year and then be the future. Whether that pans out well or not is a whole separate thing. I don't think it'll pan out well, but I do think that's the plan in New York.
Man, if they do that, oh my gosh. I feel so bad for Giants fans. Shedeur Sanders is not good. He is not good.
Like,
you said he's not the
as
next
someone
Mahomes.
who watched Shedeur Sanders play when K-State played, I agree. Shedeur Sanders is not good, and honestly, I think Travis Hunter's overrated too.
I agree
think
with
both
you,
those
actually.
Colorado guys are heavily overrated, but I think one of those guys is going to be a New York Giant.
Oh gosh. So
I think the best move for the Giants would be to draft Travis Hunter, deal with a salvageable one more year of Russell Wilson, and then go get their quarterback next year. I think that's the best move for the Giants.
But why not?
But I don't
why
think
not
that's what they're going
draft?
to do.
If Carter's there, why not draft Carter, and then just have the
They're
craziest
absolutely
defensive line in
Carter.
football?
I don't think he's going to be there.
Right, but let's say for the sake of the argument that he's there. Let's say that Carter is there.
Okay.
And it goes Ward, Hunter. And you said Sanders in that spot. Or do you think Carter should go over Sanders in that spot to the Giants?
So I think Sanders there because Carter's gone. But like you said, for the sake of that argument, let's say it's Ward and then Hunter. If you're debating between Sanders and Carter, I think they need to take Carter. I still don't know if they will, but I think they need to. Putting Abdul Carter on the same offensive line as Thibodeau, that's nasty work. That is nasty work. That is going to be a very good defensive line.
You picked the worst defensive
and
lineman of
maybe
the
Russell
three.
Wilson's good enough to deal with that.
Thibodeau's the worst of the three. It's Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns that are game wreckers at both their positions. Thibodeau and Carter.
That's fair. I forget about Lawrence. I forget he exists.
But Thibodeau. But here's my point. Thibodeau is still good. He's still going to start. He's going to be the premier edge rusher on most NFL teams. So if you had Carter, Thibodeau, Burns, and Lawrence, that rotation, you're basically playing the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl every week once you play the Giants. So I think that it's really tough. It's really hard to be a bad team if you have that defensive rotation in that edge rush. It's really tough. And as much as we want to make fun of the Giants, I love making fun of the Giants. But their coach, Brian Daboll, took a team led by Daniel Jones to the playoffs and won a playoff game in 2022, or is that 3? I don't remember, but it was in this century that a Daniel Jones-led team was taken to a playoff win by Brian Daboll. I think that Russell Wilson can be a rock that takes them to a wild card, potentially, if they draft Abdul Carter. And I think that their then plan would be exactly what the Chiefs did with Mahomes. Trade up for a mid-round quarterback that you can develop under Wilson or Winston and continue to build on what will be a ferocious defense. That is my opinion. Or potentially they get their quarterback in this year's draft and they pull together some capital, maybe package together a player or two, and move up and take Jackson Dart. Because Jackson Dart, I feel like, has a lot of potential, but I do feel like he needs to wait under a quarterback that's good. I think that if he goes to a good situation, he will be better than Sanders and Ward together. Similarly to how Mahomes was better than any of the quarterbacks selected ahead of him, like Watson. We don't even talk about Watson anymore. So I think that potentially selecting Carter and moving up for Dart could be what I would do if I were a Giants GM.
I think if the Giants did do that, it would make a lot of sense. I don't trust their GM. I think their GM is one of the worst GMs in the NFL. I searched up the Giants playoff history, and you are right. It was the 2022 playoffs, they did win a playoff game. You are going to laugh at who they, of course, beat. Do you want to take
It
a
was the
guess
Vikings. I know it was
who
the
it
Vikings.
was
I
they
watched. I
beat?
was in Chicago at the time.
Okay.
I
Oh, yeah. It
watched
was the Vikings.
Minnesota.
That was anticlimactic on my end.
The game ended on a Kirk Cousins 3-yard check down on 4th and 8. I can see it vividly in my brain. It was the most Vikings
It was
way to lose a
classic
playoff game I've ever
Vikings
seen. I have
loss.
never seen a more Vikings loss. And it just happened to be the Giants on the receiving end of the gift that was that playoff win at the very end. But I have confidence in the coaching staff in New York. I think they have a lot of good guys. I think they have a gem in Tyrone Tracy. I think they have a stud in Malik Neighbors. And I think that Russell Wilson will play admirably. And I do think that Abdul Carter would wreck games on that he would wreck games on that defensive line. It would be fun to watch the Giants for the first time in a long time. Just don't pick a quarterback if you're New York. It's a mistake. It's a trap. Don't do it.
I agree that I don't like this quarterback's draft. I think it's for me, it's giving 2013 quarterback draft, where the best quarterback was Geno Smith out of that entire draft. And this was, Geno Smith is kind of getting a little bit better now, but that's not a good draft class. I think that's all the time that we got for this week. Join us again next week on That's DPI. We're going to cover the NFC South and NFC West. And then the night before the draft, Wednesday, April 23rd, join us live for our live mock drafts.
Thank you very much. Make sure to leave your comments on who you think these teams are going to pick, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.